Welcome to Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. My name is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, the first two-day conference formed by Black independent podcast creatives and audio professionals. I'm excited to spotlight 28 outstanding indie podcast creatives who answer the call to be a part of this series. Today, my guest is Stephen Worthy. Welcome, and thank you for being here, man. How are you?
Man, I am so excited, man. This is long overdue for you and I to connect, man. And I'm happy to be here. I'm excited for the series and what this is going to do for Afros and Audios, and more importantly, for the podcasting industry in and of itself. So I'm excited, man.
Absolutely, man. I've had the privilege of talking to so many awesome podcast creatives. And frankly, these bigger industries, they missing the boat out on all the brilliance that lives in the indie space,
Come on.
But we'll get there. That's the work, right? That's the work. So tell people about Stephen Worthy. Let's start with that, and we'll definitely get to the podcast. But tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. I am one of those not rare but fortunate people who has kind of found their trifecta, which has been leadership, podcasting, and live streaming. The leadership aspect of my life, my journey started out first from the Air Force all the way through my retail executive career. The podcasting journey was something that I stumbled into in 2007. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's been a medium that I have loved. I did a little bit of radio in college and in New York a little bit, but it has been that medium that I just fell in love with and continue to love to this day. I'm not a, my girlfriend calls me a purist in the context of not so much like audio versus video and all of that. It's more in the context of I firmly believe this is a craft. Podcasting is a craft. It is something that you work on, you get better at, just like if you were an actor, just like if you were an indie race car driver. It is a craft and you hone your skills. And I am all for people getting better. And so that's just kind of been my journey from a leadership to podcasting. And then the live streaming aspect, I stumbled upon about 2 years ago. And I've utilized that medium to educate myself on how to actually grow my audience by utilizing live streaming. And now that's what we do with Podcasters Live. We have kind of taken the concept of podcasting and sort of not really turned it on its head from a discoverability standpoint, but we really are focusing in on helping this global community of content creators grow their platform utilizing podcasting and live streaming. And so we're kind of in that convergence point as well. So that's a little bit about me.
That's amazing, man. And there's a lot to kind of launch pad our conversation off of. But I want to start with, I know from myself, I started in podcasting around 2017, and that tends to be about the sweet spot of people that I meet. It's around that time, and we consider ourselves veterans. And you started in 2007. Talk to me about that. Like you said, you kind of, happenstance, you fell into it, but how did you discover podcasting, and why did you choose podcasting?
Yeah, a buddy of mine, we were at our church. Actually, I'm back here in Atlanta, but this was my first time when I lived here in Atlanta. We were teaching a entrepreneur class at our church, teaching people how to start a business, and we just hit it off, right? And we were like, well, we need to do something. We need to figure this. We need to do something different. And so we created this company. It was called By Husbands for Husbands. I completely bit FUBU. For us, by us. I completely bit that whole thing. But it resonated with husbands because there was a lot of husbands who were trying to balance being an entrepreneur and a husband. At that time, Jerry was 20 years married. I was only 7. So we had this different kind of understanding and realization of what marriage was and how to balance those things out. And so we started a business, and then we started actually a radio show called By Husbands for Husbands. And then a CEO friend of ours told us about podcasting. And we're like, what is that? What are you talking about? Well, you got to download the audio, you got to get an RSS feed, and you got to be able to submit it once to Apple, and then you got to put it on the platform so people can actually download it whenever they want, da, 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 da. And I was like, dude, that just sounds like a lot of work. He said, no, I'm telling you right now, it is going to be the next big thing. And so we trust his track record, and we actually started becoming podcasters. And we did that from 2007 to about 2012. At that point in time, the money started getting bigger from our day jobs. And so, you know how that happens, man. You gotta, take care of the family. So when that money got a little bigger, we're like, okay, well, maybe we'll revisit this podcasting down the line. And so we stopped, and then I started back around 2007 with a leadership podcast, which turned into Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. So I niched down, and then now I have that one and also Podcasters Live. So I actually have 2 podcasts that I produce.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And we talk about today how podcasting is still ever evolving. Um,
Mm,
Something's different every single day. Where from your perspective, I mean, knowing 2007,
mm,
I'm a gamer, so I can tell graphics from 2007 to
yeah.
2023, 2017, and everything else in between. So what's been your biggest thing that you could say stands out to you with how podcasting has evolved since you started?
I think the biggest thing was when, of course, when it started, it was majority white, and it still is majority white. But I think being sort of a pioneer, if you will, in that space, um, from a business standpoint, helped me embrace that nuance of coming into a market where there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me. And so I think Jerry and we are both super professional in what we tried to do. And so we wanted to make sure that we raised the bar professionally on our content, our interviews, and everything. And so I think the major thing that we've probably seen is that there's been a lot more professionalism, kind of grown into podcasting over the years, where before you still see the 2 guys in the garage just kicking it, but it has really turned more into a profession, more so than just a hobby. And I think that's where the benefits are for those who actually want to turn this into something different. You have to raise the bar for your production, for your audience, and all of that. And I think that's probably one of the main thing that I've actually seen is that level of professionalism and treating it as a craft, more so than just a hobby as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a place for both.
Sure, agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. And but we definitely want people that I've always thought of podcasting having an entrepreneurial spirit to it. You're branching out on your own, you're doing something that
Oh yeah,
your message, your brand, your voice. And so with that, it's also a cornerstone from which so many things can evolve
100%.
out of it. Yeah, yeah.
100%. Like when we started doing our podcast, it allowed us to have speaking engagements. It allowed us to get on different stages. We got sponsorships back then, from car dealerships, gosh, clothing stores, K&G. I don't know if I'm probably dating myself. I don't even know if K&G is still around or not. It probably is, but male clothing stores. And so it opened our eyes as entrepreneurs to say, dude, this is something that could be bigger than what we're actually making it into. And I honestly, you know how that goes. Hindsight is 2020. You always feel like, man, I wish I would have stuck with it. But we did what we had to do, and so now I'm back into it. Now I'm actually taking everything I've learned from back then, and then all the things I've learned from a business standpoint, and now I'm actually implementing them now as well.
That's great, man. So what would you say you've accomplished a lot in this space? What
Mhm.
would you say to date is something that you say hands down that's one of my biggest wins?
Ooh, gosh, man, gosh. I got to speak at Podfest and podcast movement, a while back, which was cool. Um, but if I could be honest with you, man, it's very something very simple. When I started back podcasting, and we were doing leadership stuff, and then I niched down to retail leadership because I did retail for 26 years, and left it all together so I can focus in on coaching. And when I niched down, it was probably honestly one of the best things that I have ever done, because I found my sweet spot. And when I'm actually recording the podcast, I can literally see, Susie or Jimmy or whoever it is that I'm talking to, and I'm talking to them about retail leadership and all the different things that I've learned, and then to actually get feedback from people in the retail world, in the retail space, like, dude, oh my gosh, I was listening to this podcast. I traveled 300 miles, and I was so happy to find a podcast for retail leaders, and you're speaking exactly what I've been going through. And so for me, I think if I didn't niche down and really hit that sweet spot, I don't think that I would be excited as I am today, nor would I probably be touching the people that I am right now, if I didn't take the time to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. And that's also a great tip and strategy for people who are still learning who they want to be, how they want
Yeah.
to up in the space.
Yeah, I think that takes time, because I
Absolutely.
honestly, and it probably takes a coach. Well, for me, it took a coach. I knew that the content was that I was doing from a leadership coaching standpoint was good. I was like, okay, this is good stuff. And then I got a coach, and he said, dude, your content is good. It's just I think your audience is wrong. And so he asked the same question. He said, well, tell me about this retail stuff. And I was like, nah, dude, I'm gonna do that podcast down the line. I'm gonna wait for this one to blow up. You know how we do. I'm gonna wait for this one to blow up, and then I'm gonna do that one. And he was like, "Now tell me about it." And Charlie Valher is over in Australia, man, and he challenged me. He said, "Okay, dude, next week, come back with like 13 episodes on retail. I don't know where they can be. Just come back 13 episodes." Man, I came back with 40 different episodes. I sat down, went to the Starbucks, and I just started like typing out in Notions all these different like experiences that I had, and then I kind of crystallized them into titles and had 40 of them. And right then and there, I knew that I had clarity. I think the tendency is that we want to do everything and we want to appease everybody, and so that's why we stay broad for so long. We're like, well, who am I going to be able to touch if I narrow my focus? I think I could touch more people if I go broad. I just think it's the exact opposite. You end up touching the more people, but you end up touching the right people when you really start to hone down and get into your sweet spot in your life and in your podcast.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. I've been a certified life coach since 2015. And
Mm,
one of the things that I know helps people, but also help myself, that clarity, man, that vision, as you begin to like literally get that piece of paper out and drill down and drill down and drill down some more, that clarity changes things.
oh, massively, massively. I always say this: the more you know about yourself, the more you can say no. And because the tendency is that we start to chase every shiny object because we don't necessarily know what our sweet spot is, or what we're really called to do. But once you really know who you are, whatever it is that passes on your desk, good idea, projects, or whatever, you can say no to that and walk away with a clear conscience. But I think there's also another thing, especially with Black folks, sometimes we don't want to disappoint people. So we say yes because we feel like we may be burning that bridge. So we may say yes, and then we end up overcommitting and not really giving our best. And then that just leaves a bad taste. And you got this whole cycle effect that kind of, goes down from there. So that's a whole nother subject though.
No, absolutely, but very relevant, because sustainability is what we want when we create a podcast. And without that clarity, you can lose yourself inside of it, or just say this isn't for me, and haven't given that 100% opportunity to discover,
Yeah.
yourself. Yes, I 100% agree, man. Um, so when it comes to, again, you've accomplished a lot. You're moving forward with this 2 years now, you said, with the Podcasters Live.
Yes.
Okay. What's the vision for 2023? Is it continuing and staying consistent and not losing your mind? Or are thinking about you thinking about expansion in this moment?
Yeah, man, we are. So two things. We have a book coming out, so hopefully later this spring. It's called How to Beat Imposter Syndrome, and we focus in on, of course, it's a play on imposter syndrome, but we focus in on content creators, podcasters, live streamers, video creators, because we feel that there is an inherent difference with content creators. I'm just going to use that as a blanket term compared to what I struggled with initially in the business world, because in the business world, I could really cover up my imposter syndrome with a whole bunch of veneer, whether it was my education, whether it was code switching, or whatever it could be. I could actually cover it up pretty nicely. From a content creation standpoint, to get closer to the audience, you actually have to be a little bit more vulnerable. And so I think that vulnerability almost forces you or brings forth more imposter syndrome than it does anything else, because dude, now I got to be a little more vulnerable. I got to tell people about X, Y, and Z, and I have to share more about myself. And so we help people kind of work through that process. But we've also been evolving into the context of raising the bar as it relates to content creation and helping people from a content creation standpoint with their platform who are utilizing live streaming and podcasting, because we feel the conversation needs to be raised. We feel that I could talk about gear all day long, but the gear isn't it. It's more along the lines of, how do we get better, and how do we utilize the tools? How do we utilize research from like Sounds Profitable and all these other places to actually grow the infrastructure of podcasting and make sure we understand that a little bit more? Because the more we know about that, I think, especially from an audio standpoint, the more advantage we can actually take, of that information. And so just raising the bar, and I don't know if you're a big YouTuber or not, but there's this company out there called Think Media, and Sean Cano. They're really big in the YouTube space, and they educate everybody on the YouTube industry, and they do a really good job. Our goal is to sort of be the Think Media, if you will, from a podcasting standpoint, is to raise the conversation and raise the bar, kind of peel the curtain back so more people can get access to it, to podcasting, but access to the information, so that way we can actually have more sustainability and better end products from a podcasting standpoint.
Man, that's amazing, and you're so valuable to this community in that spirit, really. And I can't wait for that to be Black Podcast Association book book of the month book club.
I can't either.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome, man. But just going back to what you were saying, it's so true, and we've talked about this idea of disruption, and what does that look like? Is it really going down and kicking down doors, or is it changing our minds and understanding what goes behind things and how things work in
Correct.
order to dismantle the game? The game is rigged. The game been rigged, so that's okay. We know the game's been rigged in every way that the game can be rigged. So but we continue to sustain ourselves inside of the game, and what's so important is that, for at least for our community,
Right.
seeing folks like yourself who are on that type of time, when you're like, listen, create all you want, but there's information, there's understanding, there's ways in which you can approach this industry that you can't lose, and you being the voice of that creates that possibility. And it's so important for you to be that a representative of having that information and being able to share it.
No, I appreciate that, and we just launched our very first Podcasters Live International edition yesterday. So we actually had the small island podcasters over there from the Philippines yesterday, and the Philippines is blowing up, man. Podcasting is so new over there, but the growth is so vast. And here's the other thing, is that they're not just podcasters, they are actually creating businesses around podcasting. They are podcast producers, editors, freelancers. They are doing everything. They are helping you as coaches. help you with your value proposition. So they are creating an entire industry around podcasting. And so for me, it was important. Actually, two of my VAs are in the Philippines. Actually, one of them was on the show yesterday. PJ does an amazing job. She's helped me kind of, break through, the messaging of what I really truly want to stand for. And so we've been going through this probably for like the last 5 months. But to talk about different podcasting in different countries and regions is another thing that we're focused in on. So next month we got Africa, right? So we have a lot of about 4 or 5 guys that are from Africa on the podcast, talking about the podcast industry over there and as it relates to the States. In March, we're going to talking to podcasters and podcast influencers, if you will, from the UK. So, trying to shorten the touch points, if you will, from a podcasting standpoint, also adds value to the conversation that a lot of us don't even get access to. Like hearing them talk, man. When I heard them talk last night, man, they were talking about, hey, Steve, just from a Filipino standpoint, when we see an opportunity, we just take it, and then we make more of it with what we have. And I was just like, man, that's what I'm talking about. People like, you think you need all of this and all this. They were like, no, we see the opportunity and we are seizing it and we are just going after it. And I'm just like, man, I hope y'all Americans are hearing this. I hope y'all are hearing this, man, because they about to take over. So those are some of the other things that we actually have going on from a Podcasters Live standpoint.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And that is also the greatness of podcasting, and how it can expand that worldview, right? Getting to know people who are doing different things. Definitely Africa, and places like Kenya and Ghana and Nigeria, and, just really breaking into this space. And I say this, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but for me, it's like not coming from a space of already knowing.
No, 100%.
So that makes it that much more
100%.
greater.
100%. Like, yeah. Like 100%. Like I just approaching it with ignorance, if you will, for lack of a better word. Like I don't really know. I didn't know what was going on, and I mean, I did some research or whatever, but we started off. My first question with them was like, well, tell us about the Philippines. Like, tell us about the country and the people, right? Because a lot of people, they may know somebody who's from the Philippines, but they don't know about the country. And so I think I always want to, and that was a really good foundational question to ask, because just to hear the passion in their voice about their country, and then how that just translated into what they're doing. For me, it just, I didn't know a lot of that stuff. I visited the Philippines when I was in the Air Force in the early 90s. That's the early 90s, completely changed. And now allowing them to say what it is they want to say about their country and then moving it into the business of podcasting, now it's a completely good segue, and people can get a completely different perspective and learn, just like I was a student last night and learned so much. So we can continue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. And, speaking of students, I've come to a few of your podcasters live, and being a coach, being, in the spaces that I am, there's not often that I can walk away with some new information or I'm inspired. It really isn't. And it can be disappointing. I'm sure you feel the same way. You hear a bunch of the same messages over and over again. Yeah. So I've gained so much listening to some of those podcasters live.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's important work, man. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I think that was the critical part. Initially, you work within the sphere of influence that you have with people and what they can offer you, relative to their podcasting skills, their live streaming skills, and then you just realize, the fortunate part for me, I was able to get James Cridlin on, which was like, I felt like just a massive get in the podcasting industry, trying to get Brian Barletta, on, and just some more of these, people who are the behind the scenes curators, if you will, from a podcasting standpoint of what's taking place. And I often laugh a little bit. I was talking to Corey, we were talking about, it's just like almost with everything. A lot of times to withhold things from Black people. They put it in books back in the day. You remember that? And now they just use terms like, podcasting 2.0, value for value, all these different things that, we're like, what the hell? Well, hold on, what is podcasting 1.0? I don't even know what that is yet, right? And so they create these layers, right, that you actually have to kind of figure out first to move through, but they're already there because they're the ones that are creating those layers. And so for me, my goal is to get to where those layers are and then be able to break them down to a digestible fashion for everybody else. So that way it's not, it's nothing new for the audience, and also for people who just who want to learn or who actually need to get there as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And one of the biggest reasons, for Afros and Audio, is that we know that there's information that it doesn't get disseminated appropriately. And I say all the time, we all have access to Google, sure,
Yeah.
but a lot of us have other things to do with our life and times, and then Google something that we need to know.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed, man.
It's important that we have spaces where we're sharing our knowledge, our experiences, but also making sure that we know, like you said, the information is out there, because there's some of us that's our wheelhouse. It's not mine. I'm very glad it's yours, but for some of us, that's our sweet spot. Like, give me the information and let me do with it what I will.
Yeah.
And that's important. Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, man. Well, listen, I've had a great time speaking with you today. I really had.
Yeah.
Tell everyone we talked about the podcast, but please mention them again. Anything else that you want to promote? The book again, do whatever you need to do. All and then definitely let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate the conversation, and I really hope that this. I know that not just this conversation, but all of the other conversations are going to be a huge value add to people. And you can connect with us. We have two podcasts. It's Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, and then we also have Podcasters Live. But you can connect with us at asksteveworthy.com. And here's why I always use that one, because invariably, whenever I'm talking on the podcast or live stream, if I'm talking about leadership, I end up almost not code switching, but I end up going over to podcasting and talking about that. And if I'm talking about podcasting, somehow I bring the leadership piece in here. And I've found that people will connect with me on one of the two areas. And so we just created the asksteveworthy.com. So if you heard me talking about leadership and you like what you heard about that, then that's cool. We got an opportunity to talk to me there. If you want to learn a little bit more about podcasting and what we can do for your platform, you can connect with us there. So it's both on asksteveworthy.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I'm going to close this out, and I'll ask that you stay right there for me. All right?
Yep. Right. I got you, man.
All right. So I want to give a big thanks to our Afros and Audio and Black podcast community for supporting our commitment for community and collaboration. If you'd like to join the Black Podcast Association, the link will be in the description below. And if you want to join us at the 5th annual Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, visit bit.ly AFAU, which will also be in the description. Follow us on all social media channels at Afros and Audio. And thanks again, Stephen, for being a part of Afros and Audio's first ever Black History Month interview series. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm glad to be here. Thanks, man.
All right.